Okay, so I'm recording this video. Let's turn this off. I'm recording this video. It is Tuesday evening. And currently, yesterday's video has 701 likes. And I said that if we got 1,000 likes, I would clap in this video. And so even though I don't know for a fact if we got 1,000 likes in the last video, because I have faith in you, you earned this, probably. If you didn't earn it, that would be sad. Here you go. Ready? Very nice. Here at the WolfeyVGC channel, we keep pushing. Today's video is about some of the new items that were revealed at the Pokemon World Championships, which I'm very excited for. We'll do the same thing. If this video gets 1,000 likes, I promise to clap in the next video. But if we can get to 2,000 likes, which I admit may not be possible, it may be beyond the scope of this channel's abilities, but if we can do it, I will clap twice, just for you. Thank you. Anyway, today we're talking about some of the new items that were revealed in Pokemon Sword and Pokemon Shield. Specifically, the Eject Pack and Room Service, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Eject Pack and Room Service. These items are really interesting, and they're interesting for two reasons. Number one, inherently they're interesting because of the way that they work, because of their effects, because of what the items actually do. And number two, they're interesting because they show that Game Freak, or whoever makes these games, which I believe is Game Freak, they show that whoever watches the competitive scene, whoever is making the games is paying attention to the competitive scene of Pokemon, right? They are responding here to two phenomenon that don't happen to be play a huge role in the main story of the game. They don't really play that big of a role. Yeah, in story mode, occasionally, sure, but they could make a big deal in competitive play. Especially Room Service. Eject Pack, you could argue either way, but especially the Room Service item. That is something that seems to be geared specifically towards competitive play, and so I'm very interested because these items were kind of presented as arguments that, Game Freak and Pokemon are paying more attention to VGC, that they're paying more attention to competitive players, because these items are so clearly designed with competitive play in mind, and they were also revealed at the World Championships, which is the height of competitive play for the VGC series circuit. I don't know, whatever. Yeah, I don't know the grammar there. Anyway, so what do these items do, and are they going to be good? That's the question we're trying to answer here. First of all, the Eject Pack. I think the Eject Pack is the one that is harder to say now because we don't know for sure how it works. So what is stated about the Eject Pack is if the Pokemon stats are dropped. Actually, let's find the official wording here. Eject Pack. So according to Bulbapedia, it switches out the holder if any of its stats are lowered. However, there's a couple ways of interpreting that. We're gonna check one more source. Yeah, so the official, here we go. So I've heard an article here, and this article says, and here's a screenshot. It says an item to be held by a Pokemon when the holder stats are lowered, it will be switched out of battle. So basically, there are two scenarios, and one of them means the Eject Pack is usable, and the other one means the Eject Pack is most likely not usable in competitive play, with how this item interacts. So the first scenario is that opposing Pokemon lowering your stats switches you out. Specifically, I'm thinking about Intimidate. So if the Eject Pack works like it is stated to work based on what we know about it, and I'll get in a second to why I think it might be more complex than it seems at first. Basically, it's a switch out button. So the example used in the trailer of this this item was a Pokemon used Draco Meteor, a move famous for after the attack lands, it lowers the user's special attack by 2 stages, and then the Eject Pack switched them out. And in general, that's a really interesting kind of strategy that you can use. There are a lot of Pokemon who would appreciate a free switch. Pokemon that lower their defenses after close combat, Pokemon that lower their special attacks, like most dragon types using Draco Meteor. The ability to switch out immediately and get yourself a free switch, and also for fast Pokemon, like fast dragon types, for example, or fast, Overheat, all fast Pokemon. If you're up against something unfavorable, it seems really cool that you could, drop a powerful attack and switch out in the same turn. That actually seems like it could have a lot of use. And where I get into the caveat is what if Intimidate activates this thing? Because if this thing can be activated by your opponent, and specifically by your opponent's Intimidate, that could be pretty bad, frankly. I'm going to keep it real with you guys. That could be pretty bad and would really, really reduce the use of this, or the usefulness of this item. Because let's say my opponent has like a Hydreigon on the field, and I have 2 Dragon-type Pokemon on the field, and let's say my opponent has used Imprison, so I can't protect. Let's say normally I would have to take a Draco Meteor here, and both my Pokemon are very slow. Let's say I have 2 Drampa that are Assault Vest, and they both have 10% HP left, whatever. Now my opponent normally could just attack, right? And if Eject Pack works in a way that I think it works, or that I hope it works, they could attack and then immediately switch out. So if they needed to use Draco Meteor to get a KO, then they could, and then switch out as well. But what if I know that they have Eject Pack, and what if my Intimidate will force them out? Then what I can do is I can switch in my Intimidate user, force my opponent, or lower my opponent's attack, and then before they can attack, because switching happens before attacks, force them out, meaning they don't get to use an attack this turn. The reason why Eject Button is considered to be not that good of an item in general is that if you want so Eject Button Politoed was used for a little bit, and I always thought it was really bad because basically, if you have Politoed in the field, if you lead with Politoed, for example, if you do anything other than switching Politoed in, and your opponent knows it, they basically get 1 free attack on that Politoed where they get to target the Politoed, do a little bit of damage, and as long as they outspeed, they can basically make it so that it's like a flinch. Except you get a switch, but they make it so that they can dodge damage for 1 turn, which can actually be a big deal. And so this is even more abusable because it's abusable by what's traditionally thought of as like a good switch anyway. Like Intimidate is one of if not the best abilities in the game. And the fact that you could switch it in and not only use it as its normal use, which is weakening your opponents, but also forcing them out, I think it would make Eject Pack pretty bad. Some ways around that include potentially Mirror Armor, which is Corviknight's hidden ability, I believe. Or Corviknight's hidden ability, whatever the heck it's called. I'm not entirely sure how that works yet. I don't know if it protects the partner from Eject Pack, but or from Intimidate, but we'll have to wait and see. With that one, that's something that could be potentially good. Galarian Weezing turning off Intimidate is another use for it, but those are both kind of niche and require another Pokemon to be on the field. So, in short, I guess I think that Eject Pack would really suffer if it's activated by Intimidate. If it's not activated by Intimidate, I think it's a pretty interesting item. I don't necessarily know if it's going to be meta defining or on. We wouldn't expect it to be on every team, but I think it could be really good. Like for the reasons I mentioned, fast Pokemon that lower their stats and then will appreciate switching out, and Pokemon like we don't know if Infernape is in the game, but a fast Fake Out and then like Fake Out close combat overheat Infernape could be super good. For example, get reuse a Fake Out with that. Fake Out Pokemon in general, Pokemon that want to be switching in. Those are all good uses for it. The reason why I think there's a chance it might not work with Intimidate is because of how competitive works. Because competitive kind of has interesting and Defiant as well. Where let's say I use Fake Tears on my Milotic, I don't get the competitive boost. Competitive only activates if your opponent activates it. Like if your opponent lowers your stats, then you get your boost Defiant as well. But you can't activate your own. You can't activate your own competitive or Defiant with anything other than like skill swapping Stantler Intimidate to the opponent. If that makes sense. Like you can't lower your partner's stats and then get the boost. So for that reason, I think that the mechanics might be a little bit more nuanced. The more interesting one, the one that I think is the item I think is far more interesting is Room Service. Or not more interesting, but I would say has a higher probability of being good. Room Service lowers your speed if Trick Room is set up, acting as kind of like a reverse Adrenaline Orb for Trick Room, which is too complex of a metaphor. I'm sorry. Can we also pour one out for Adrenaline Orb? That thing got no usage. That thing was not good. Room Service. Okay, Room Service is cool because there's a lot of Pokemon that are in a speed tier that they want to function both in and out of Trick Room. And normally you would have to commit, but with Room Service, you could actually do both. So for example, let's say I had a Gengar at like 130 speed stat. Or like, let's say I had a Gengar at 100 and, what's Gengar's min speed? Like, let's say like 105 is Gengar's min speed, 103, 104, somewhere in there. Let's say I wanted like a 110 speed Gengar to outspeed like certain Pokemon, but then in Trick Room under like... Basically, with Room Service, there's a lot of middle speed tier Pokemon. For example, Gengar. Sorry, let me do it this way. Pokemon such as Gengar, which have naturally a high base speed, but occasionally want to run Trick Room on certain teams, have been put in a position where they either have to run an item that's like Iron Ball, where they become very slow and kind of unfunction, like not able to function out of Trick Room, or they're too fast for Trick Room in general, right? Like Trick Room Gengar won Worlds, I believe, in the Senior Division in 2014, if I'm not misremembering. And it was a really cool tech, but a lot of it is it gets a lot worse once you know the speed stat. Like, oh, this Gengar is fast, so if he sets up Trick Room, then my slower Pokemon can underspeed. Or, oh, this Gengar is so slow, I can attack it before it sets Trick Room. And so with the item Room Service, it gives you the ability to kind of do an option select once, where you don't have to set Trick Room, or if Trick Room for some reason doesn't go up, you can have your Pokemon be faster outside of Trick Room, but if Trick Room does go up, you have the ability to be slower. And that's like a super, super interesting mechanic, and I think it could actually be super good. Again, I don't think this is something that's going to be on every team. I think that this is a very niche pick, and honestly, like, with an item like this, I think that for it to be utilized to its full potential, I think you have to be super intentional about where you put it and how you use it. I don't think this is an item you just slap on a Pokemon in general and be like, oh, that seems good. Like, I think that this is pretty much, I think this is a very high level, really complex item, and I don't imagine using it optimally is going to be super easy, but I think the reward is there. I think this is one of the biggest, this is one of the most interesting and potentially biggest has the potential to shake up a lot of stuff within VGC because of how powerful Trick Room is, and because of kind of this fundamental problem of fast Pokemon who want to use Trick Room or who want to function in Trick Room. Also, Gengar is an example, but another example is a Pokemon like, I don't want to say Tapu Koko because it's a bit too fast, but like, a Pokemon like at 100, like Thundurus, for example, right? Like, you could have or let's say Raichu. Like, so Raichu, like, let's say Raichu, because it can outspeed base 100 Pokemon. Let's say you had a Raichu that's like 169 speed stat, 168 speed stat, which outspeeds at base 100 Pokemon. You could then have a Room Service on it. Raichu's kind of a bad example because it's frail, but you know what I mean. Like a Pokemon like Nihilego. Sorry, Nihilego is the perfect example. You don't even need to set Trick Room with Nihilego, but like if you do, then you have a Pokemon that's going to outspeed base 100s out of Trick Room and outspeed base 100s in Trick Room, or like underspeed, but you know what I'm saying. I think I've made my point in a way that's not super clear, but I also think you guys are smart and understand what I'm saying. So, with all that being said, I'm really excited for this item, for both these items, but specifically for Room Service. I think Room Service is probably a lot better. Eject Pack, I think, has potential. I think you could do some really cool stuff with it, if and only if it doesn't activate on Intimidate. If Intimidate activates this thing, I think it's going to have a lot harder time, but Room Service, I think, I would not be surprised to see some teams do very well with this item. So, yeah, that's all I've got. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Please like this video. If we can get to 2,000 likes, then I will clap 2 times, which is quite rare. Never have clapped before in my life, so, you know, it's going to be a big challenge for me as well. But yeah, thanks for liking this video, or for watching this video, and for liking it. If you've liked it, thank you. Please make sure to subscribe. Check out the other Sword and Shield content I have on this channel, and, yeah, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. How do I always do it wrong? Peace, 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 peace.